Welcome back, everyone. I am Tom Jacobson, pastor at Grace Lutheran Church in Thornville, Ohio, and this is the fifth video in a brief series of discussions about what we call the Nicene Creed on this 1700th anniversary of the first appearance of that creed in 325 AD. It is November 26th, the day before Thanksgiving. So we're looking forward to that tomorrow. Time to give thanks for all the blessings we've received from the hand of God. Thanksgiving as an annual holiday in American life stems from the time of the Civil War, actually. There had been days of Thanksgiving proclaimed at other times before that. Obviously, we hear about the Pilgrims and the story surrounding that, the first Thanksgiving, so to speak. But as an annual holiday, it came from the time of the Civil War, I believe 1863, proclaimed by President Abraham Lincoln at a very dire time in American history. But that's a topic for another time. We want to talk about the Nicene Creed. So I'm assuming that you have listened to the previous installments of this series, so no need to rehash all of that. But it's important to remember that all of these things build on each other. So I want to talk about this one part of the Nicene Creed, getting toward the end of it. And it says this: "We believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life, who proceeds from the Father and the Son. With the Father and the Son he is worshipped and glorified. He has spoken through the prophets." So that's the piece that I want to focus on today. The Holy Spirit. What is the Holy Spirit? If you'll recall, in one of the previous videos, I read the text of the original version of the Nicene Creed that appeared in 325 before it was edited, expanded into what we have today at the Council of Constantinople in 381. In that original version of the Nicene Creed, it really doesn't say anything about the Holy Spirit, except for the fact that there is a Holy Spirit. It goes through all of the information about how the Son of God is of the same substance as God the Father, and so on, and then it gets down to the Holy Spirit, and it just says, "And we believe in the Holy Spirit." Well, what do we believe about the Holy Spirit? So it's almost as though these people knew that they were kicking the can down the road, that this was an issue that was going to have to be resolved eventually. So is the Holy Spirit understood to be God? That's the big question. So there had been a lot of debates about this. Even after the Council of Nicaea in 325, not everybody agreed on whether the Holy Spirit should be considered God, just as the Son is considered God and the Father is considered God. There were people who agreed with the original text of the Nicene Creed, but who did believe that the Holy Spirit should not be considered God. And those people came to be known as pneumomachioi, literally spirit fighters in Greek. So they fought against the idea that the Holy Spirit is God. One of the key figures involved in proclaiming the divinity of the Holy Spirit was a man named Basil of Caesarea. He, along with two others, Gregory of Nyssa and Gregory of Nazianzus, these three people came to be known as the Cappadocian Fathers, or Cappadocian, depending on how you pronounce it. These Cappadocian Fathers, they were very instrumental in the development of the theology surrounding the Trinity, God as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So Basil the Great has been famous for various things, but one of the things he's famous for is arguing that the Holy Spirit is indeed God. So we can't get into complete, total detail about all of these debates. But one issue that people will say, that they'll say, well, the Bible never says the Holy Spirit is God. Well, that's not exactly true. When you read the book of Acts, the Acts of the Apostles, the sequel to the Gospel of Luke, which tells about the earliest Christian communities, or at least one part of the early Christian communities. In chapter 5, you get the story of Ananias and Sapphira, and how they withheld their belongings from the community at the time that community was sharing things in common. They withheld some of their possessions and lied about it. So the real issue that led to their demise is the fact that they lied about it. And in response to this, Peter, the chief apostle, chief disciple, he makes a comment saying that you have deceived the Holy Spirit, or you have lied to the Holy Spirit. You have not lied to men, but to God. So that passage is often used as a way of describing that the Holy Spirit is indeed understood to be God, along with Father and Son. So, the earliest part of the Creed just said we believe in the Holy Spirit, but when they revised the Creed later on, they said they wanted to emphasize that the Holy Spirit is also God, as the Scriptures bear witness. In various places, you get the triadic formula, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, in Matthew 28, and other places as well. So, that was the issue. Interestingly, when they described the Holy Spirit, they did not use the same word that was used to describe the relationship between the Father and the Son. The word that they had used was homoousios, of the same substance. Curiously, they chose not to use that word, claiming that the Holy Spirit is of the same substance as the Father and the Son. But what they did say instead is that the Holy Spirit is the Lord, the giver of life. So the Holy Spirit is the Lord. And that was a way of emphasizing that the Holy Spirit is indeed God. And the fact that they left out the word homoousios is probably a way of being more diplomatic about trying to satisfy the pneumomachioi, the spirit fighters. Okay, so that's one issue. Now, the original text of the Nicene Creed, that was finalized in 381 AD, the one that we use today. The original version, written in Greek, just said this: "We believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life, who proceeds from the Father." That's what the original version said. The original version did not include the phrase, "and the Son." This has remained a controversial issue up to the present day. And it's actually been in the news recently, a lot of debates about whether or not we should use the phrase "and the Son." So here's the brief history behind this. Now, early on, Christians had this text of the Nicene Creed that just said the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father. Now, as the Christian faith expanded further west, the Western Christians, in what is today what we call Western Europe, as opposed to the Eastern Christians in the eastern part of around Greece and so forth, they came to develop different traditions about things. In theory, they were still unified with each other, but they developed different traditions, different ways of talking about things, different theological emphases. One practical issue that the Western Christians were wrestling with is that even after the Council of Nicaea in 325, there were still people who opposed the idea that the Father and the Son are of the same substance. This so-called Arian version of Christianity, which followed the teachings of Arius, whose views were condemned at the Council of Nicaea. The Arian form of Christianity had been adopted by Gothic tribes in the western part of the old Roman Empire, so Western Europe. So groups like the Visigoths, for example, they adopted the Arian version of Christianity that rejected the concept of what would become the Trinity. They claimed that the Son was not equal to the Father. So even after the Council of Nicaea, this debate continued to rage. The man named Athanasius of Alexandria, for example, took a hard stand in support of the decree of the Council of Nicaea. He found himself exiled several times. So for a time, it was not exactly clear which version of Christianity was going to become dominant, even after the Council of Nicaea. So this helps explain why the Western Christians added the phrase "and the Son" to the creed. So what they wanted to accomplish, that was first promoted at what's called the Synod or the Council of Toledo in 589 AD, so Toledo, modern-day Spain. They decided to insert the phrase in Latin, filioque, which literally means "and the Son." So we believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life, who proceeds from the Father and the Son. Why would they do this? Well, I think one explanation is that it was a way for them to emphasize, in response to the Arian Christians in the West, which were kind of fizzling out at that point anyway, but as a way of emphasizing the theological truth that if the Holy Spirit proceeds from both the Father and the Son, it's a way of emphasizing that the Father and the Son are both divine, are both God, that the Son is indeed of the same substance as the Father. So in the Western Christian tradition, out of which Lutherans come, modern-day Roman Catholics, and other churches of the West, we have been accustomed to saying the Nicene Creed with the phrase, "The Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son." Now, the Eastern Orthodox churches, they do not accept that. They say the Nicene Creed simply by saying the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father. And that is the original version. There's been a lot of discussion about this. Should we give up on the phrase filioque and the Son? I have to say no. When you read the Bible, it seems to me to be very clear that the Holy Spirit does indeed proceed from the Son, as well as the Father. In the Gospel of John, when Jesus is raised from the dead, in John chapter 20, he gathers with his disciples. He breathes on them, and he says, "Receive the Holy Spirit." The Holy Spirit does proceed from the Son. There's nothing wrong with saying that. But, in fairness, that was not a part of the original version of the Nicene Creed. So the question is it okay to say the creed without the filioque clause? I suppose you can. It's not untrue, but it's also not true in the fullest sense, you could argue. So this remains an issue between the Western Christian world and the Eastern Christian world. It was one issue, among some others, that led to the eventual formal division between the Eastern churches and the Western churches in the year 1054 AD. So in the year 1054, tensions between the East and the West, which really centered around the issue of authority. Does the Pope in Rome have ultimate authority over all Christians, or does the Pope share authority with the other bishops of the other patriarchates of the East? Really, all of the debates involved in this are really, what it really comes down to is the issue of authority in the Christian world. Does the West have the authority to add the phrase "and the Son" to the Nicene Creed? The Eastern churches said no. You can't just do that unilaterally. That's something that would have to be done as a community of all the bishops of the Christian world. So that's really what that's all about. So that's a brief overview of what this is about, talking about the Holy Spirit. I'll have one more of these videos to conclude talking about the rest of this creed. But for now, I wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving tomorrow, and see you back soon.